What's up, you guys? My name is Lauren Hardy, and we are live with the man, the myth, the legend, Steve Trang. I feel so honored that you are spending your afternoon with me, Steve. You know so many people in the business. You are very well known. Usually you are behind the mic interviewing other people, but this time I get to interview you. I'm excited. Steve, welcome to my live. We are streaming this live on my YouTube, but this eventually is going to be on the Wholesaling Inc podcast. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Steve,
I think, you're saying like, you feel honored, but you're awesome, right? Like you're crushing it too. So it's not like you're reaching up, we're peers. So.
I mean, I feel like I'm reaching up right now. I definitely feel like, I'm reaching up a little bit, like almost imposter syndrome. Like, how am I interviewing the Steve Trang? I'm stoked. Yeah. So Steve, we met a month ago. I was on your podcast, on the Real Estate Disruptors podcast in Phoenix. And that was a great opportunity. I had a lot of fun, and we figured out we had a lot of different things in common that we like kind of
more than we thought.
Way more than we thought. Like, we were like, are we the same person? This is weird. Like, yeah, I know we look different, but I feel the same.
Well, we had a blast, and it's always a trip. It's always an adventure, right? I mean, there's so many people out here that anytime you come out, like, it's almost like a second home. I first met you when you were at Batch's office to do Brent's podcast, and you were out for the TTP Christmas party.
Yeah,
we hung out there. So it's like we go way back.
We go way back. So Steve, I mean, there's so much I want to ask you, but I think, you're so well known for your podcast and like you interview other people, but like, I want to know more, like, who is Steve Trang? So Steve, tell me about yourself, and not just in the real estate world. Like, tell me your family. Are you married? You got kids? Where are you from?
Definitely married, right? Happily. In fact, it's one of my things is every morning, when I'm looking at my affirmations, is and vision is, a cherished wife is number one on my vision board. So married, 3 kids, 3 awesome and also difficult kids. And then as far as, where I came from, I came here as an immigrant, 7 months old, born in a refugee camp in Italy. I hate to get political, but, we have an interesting environment today. And my grandparents had the opportunity to lose everything when communism took over in China. So they fled to Vietnam. And then my parents, grew up and had businesses, and they had the opportunity for all of that to get lost with communism. And so right now, you kind of witness this environment as an immigrant who's kind of had everything taken twice. You get to witness this and see like, okay, well, hopefully we learned the lessons from the past, but looks like we're not. Looks like we're going to get to learn it again. So came here with nothing, literally nothing. We were sponsored by some families. Grew up living in a cheap apartment, a mobile home. We're actually, the mobile home park I grew up in Tempe, is across the street from where I got my last 2 Teslas, So it's just kind of like, it's interesting to experience. But grew up, good kid, good grades. Mom and dad always said, do well in school, get a good job. And I did that. Full ride to ASU, full ride to UC San Diego. Did the corporate thing, found out the corporate thing's not for me. I always did good work, but man, working for somebody just was not for me. And I think that probably is true for a lot of people that are listening. Just working really hard for someone else to make a lot of money, that's just not in it for me. I can't do that. And so that was how I got into, that's what led me to getting into real estate.
Okay, so take me back. How old were you when you lived in a trailer park?
So my earliest memories are in a mobile home. So I think we were in there until like I was 2 or 3.
And then, okay, so from there, so you had obviously very humble beginnings.
Yeah.
Your family, and I have an immigrant family. I was born here, but my mom was born in Iran. So I'm very like, I can feel you there on having immigrant family and immigrant background. There's something different about it. Because, your family shares the struggles. I mean, it comes through generationally to us, even though I didn't experience, but I heard the stories, I've heard the struggles, and I was raised by those people. So humble beginnings, but your parents, they were probably pretty traditional and said, get good grades and go to college.
Yeah. And they busted their asses. I'm the oldest of 6 boys.
Wow.
and they busted their butts. They both worked anywhere from 60 to 80 hours a week. So it's not like they were home. So they set the ground rules, get good grades, don't screw up in school and stuff like that. And gave you the treatment, like you're not doing good enough in school.
Right.
So-and-so kids doing better in school, be more like them, right? So we had that, but they weren't really around. There was a lot of self-policing. One of the things that I got to experience was being, like I said, the oldest of 6 boys, was I was like kind of like the father figure to my younger brothers.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of instilled a little bit of responsibility in me. But incredible parents, and it was through their hard work that laid the foundation for me to be able to do what I do, right? Because if they weren't basically killing themselves, working crazy hours, I wouldn't have been able to go to college, get a good job or whatever, even though the job wasn't for me. I could have been in a very different situation. I mean, I can't even imagine if I was growing up, let's just say things didn't change in Vietnam, and I was still living there. I would not have the same opportunities.
Right.
I have today.
Right. That's and it's funny because my mom was from Iran, and she worked like 65 hours a week in IT, like killing herself. And so maybe like that is kind of why we have some similarities where like I looked at my mom, I was like, I never want to live that life. Like she missed so much of my life. Like she missed important moments of my life, and I kind of had to raise myself. And, and it was, but I mean, she had to do that. She didn't have any other options. And it's like, she did that so I can live the life that I live.
Right.
So,
that's a good point, because like basketball, for people that know me, like basketball is really important to me. It's one of my passions. And my dad only went to one game that I played ever in my whole life. Right. And so I always said, whatever I do, it's important to me to have good work-life balance. And a lot of people say work-life balance is, first everyone wants it, and then they come to the conclusion that it's a myth. And I would argue it's not a myth, because that's what I set more important than anything else is time with my family. So, with all the different businesses I run, I work about 40 hours a week, and that's intentional. I time block time for family. And, because just like you, I had that experience growing up. It's like, there's no mom and dad. We're heating up food ourselves. We're eating, Gourmet Delight, free from the freezer, whatever mom was buying at Fry's for 79 cents a box. Yeah. That's what I grew up on.
No, I totally get you. And but the thing is of having those types of parents is they work so hard. Like, I don't know about you, but there was never any excuse I could make to my mom. She would I'd be like, oh, mom, like homework is so hard. Like algebra is so hard. Like, I don't get it. And she'd be like, you know what is hard? Getting kicked out of the country because you don't have citizenship.
You can't bring up anything that's going anywhere near as difficult as what your parents went through.
Oh yeah, she's like, you know what else is hard, Loden? Because that's how she talks.
Yeah, the accent.
Loden, you don't know what else is hard. And she'd say like, coming to the country not speaking English, and your first high school is in Compton, LA.
Oh, it was Compton.
Yeah. I'm like, how do I ever make my mom feel bad for me? Like, I could never, she never, ever gave me any sympathy at all. She'd be like, take those violins and throw them in the trash and get your ass to school.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get that. Like my mom, she went to high school when we came here, she had me when she was 16. Right. So when we came here, she was still a high school age. She was like, I can't even so she had to drop out of high school because she couldn't handle high school and me. Like that's kind of what they grew up with, what I grew up with. So yeah, I totally understand what your mom's talking about.
For sure. Yeah. Now fast forward, you went to college. What did you study?
Electrical engineering. Not because I was passionate about it, but only because I was good at math. That's the only reason why. Right. So I did electrical engineering, graduated in 4 years. And then this is when I graduated, was 2002. And this is right after 9/11 and the .com bust. So nobody's hiring. Right. And so as an electrical engineer, you can make like 45, 50,000, which isn't bad. But, if you start at that time with a bachelor's degree, you'll never have a good engineering job. You'll always be like the lower level engineer. As electrical, like you can't just have a bachelor's degree. So I said, okay, well, I'll go to graduate school. I'll get a PhD. And I did that for a year and a half. I was like, being a PhD sucks. So I left with a master's degree. And at that time, only one company was hiring. It was Intel in Sacramento. So I figured, well, there's an Intel like literally a half mile from my parents' house. So I'll just work at Intel for a year and a half until there's an opening in Chandler. And as soon as there's an opening in Chandler, I'll move back home. And after a year, there was an opening. So I worked in Sacramento for a year and a half, transferred down to Chandler. Yeah, I moved back home as soon as I could. And there's actually a term for that. They call it pulling a Steve, which is basically working somewhere only until a position is open back home. I guess I left a bitter taste in a few people's mouths when I left. I was torn about it, but here's the thing, right? No employer really cares about you. Like they care about you, right? Mm-hmm. As a boss, like a boss will care about you, but like a company just doesn't care about you. You got to do what's best for you. You can't live for a faceless entity. But I struggled with it for a while.
Well, because you probably were a rule follower.
I was a little bit, yeah.
Right? Like with your upbringing, you know, you had to follow the rules even if your parents weren't there.
Yeah.
You know, so, but you probably, it seems like you've challenged that, you know, as you broke off and started doing your own thing, which is sort of, you know, that is kind of like breaking the rules a little bit. Yeah.
Well, once you get comfortable in the corporate world and you realize, not just I probably, if it weren't for like a handful of books, I probably would still be an engineer, right? Like you don't know what's possible. And right now you got YouTube and a lot of people are learning from podcasts and so on, what's available out there. But if it weren't for a handful of books, you know, you got Kiyosaki, T. Harv Eker, and these books that are out there, and Napoleon Hill, I might still be an engineer because you can see what's out there, what's available. And I didn't have a bad life. When I quit my job, I was making $85,000 a year plus benefits. Like, you know, health was good, health insurance was good. There was stock options, and like it wasn't stock options. They would just give you stocks, you know? So like I was making, you know, after everything, like $100,000 a year when I quit. It was a really good life. But I also knew that wasn't the life for me. So
then tell me what got you into real estate investing?
So after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, I realized that there's ways to get out of the rat race. I had still have, you know, 3 best friends, and we formed an LLC together to buy rental properties. And thank God we got our loans denied, because this is back in 2006, 2007, because otherwise we'd have more foreclosures than the ones we already have. While doing that, I met a broker who positioned himself as an investment broker, talked a pretty big game. And I said, okay, well, you know, it seems like you're doing really well and you make pretty good money. Like, what do you do? And he's like, you know, I make 6 figures and all I do is talk to people. Rich, sound familiar? And he's like, yeah, you just talk to people all day and you just make a lot of money. I was like, well, I can do that. So at that point, I got my real estate license in 2.5 weeks. Immediately submitted my 2 weeks notice and went full time in the real estate, which in hindsight was a terrible idea, right? Because the market just took a massive dump at that point.
Right.
But I only know one way, which is to go all in.
Yeah. One speed, full speed.
Exactly.
That's what I always say. I only have one speed, full speed. That's it.
Yeah, it's go big or go home.
What year was this?
This was 2007.
2007. Okay, yeah. Crap year. Crap year to get into real estate.
Yeah, you know, what was really cool was at that time, you know, I was still working really hard, worked way harder for myself, because when I was doing really well at Intel, I was working like 25 hours a week. I wasn't working hard at all, you know? So I was working way harder for myself. And it was really cool was talking to some people. They're like, man, if you can express this work ethic right now in this crappy times, you're going to crush it when things turn around. I had a couple people said, like, I can't wait to see who you become when the market turns around. I was like, wow, that's kind of a huge compliment, because like I'm nobody, you know, but clearly people saw some things in me that I didn't see in myself yet. So
now take me from the struggle to then you started out in residential, like it sounds like residential sales.
Mm-hmm. As a realtor, yeah.
As a realtor. And then what got you into being an investor?
I did the realtor thing and it was cool and all, not the most exciting thing. Turns out it's a job. Around 2011, 2012, I got into coaching. So I struggled along the way, and then I got into my first coaching program because I knew something had to change. And so I got into coaching, and that's when it transformed me from being a realtor to a business owner that happens to be in real estate, right? Like that was the thing that clicked in my brain. And then after that, you know, I'm always trying to find more leads. And there was a guy that had a program, House Buyer Network, which basically was pay-per-click leads for sellers. And so I said, okay, I tried to sign up for that, but it was exclusive per market, so I couldn't get in. And I'm not one that takes no for an answer. I was like, well, I can't buy it from you, then I'll make it myself. And so I did. And so I started doing my own pay-per-click marketing. And at that time, the biggest competitor was Sean Terry. And so for a couple of years, it was basically me and Sean Terry. And what did I do? I copied his websites, right? So I made my own websites, copied his, and then there's a tool, I don't know if it's still around, it was called Keyword Spy. And so using Keyword Spy, you can find what other people are bidding on. So you can find the keywords they're using and their ad copy. So what did I do? I copied his ad copy and I copied his keywords. And I did this, and this actually got me a lot of listings. So what the problem was is that I was still thinking like a realtor instead of thinking like a wholesaler. And so I would go to these appointments and I say, well, you don't want to go with an investor. Like if we list your house, you'll get more money. And I got plenty of listings that way. But I did get a lot of people that also said, no, I want cash, right? Because how do they find me? Buy my house, sell my house fast, right? And so when I would go in there, the first couple of houses I bought, it was like, we can list it for 100,000 in 30 days, you'll get 91,000 after all closing costs. And I said, no, we want a cash offer today. It's like, well, a cash offer is gonna be a lot less than that. And they said, no, we want a cash offer. I said, well, the most I can offer for this is like 80,000. She's like, done. I said, I don't think you heard me. If we list it for 100,000, you'll get 91,000. She's like, no, I'll take the 80.
Right.
Said, are you sure? She's like, yes. I said, okay. So I bought her house. And on the way home, actually, I called my wife and said, hey, we just bought a house. She's like, what do you mean we just bought a house? Like, they wanted cash, so I made a cash offer. And she said, okay, well, how are we gonna buy it? I was like, I don't know, we'll figure it out. Hung up, call my dad. Hey, Dad, do you have $80,000? He's like, yeah, I have $80,000. Okay, great, we're buying a house. And so the first couple of times that happened, we bought them and we wholesaled them. We were wholesaling before we knew what wholesaling was. But eventually we ran out of money. And once we ran out of money, then I was like, crap. Now I learned about this Anna or assignee thing. Let's look into this some more. Jamil actually called me as a Zillow lead. So Jamil is a Zillow lead. That's how we connected, right? I was a Zillow Premier agent. Jamil was a Zillow lead. Called me, and he bought one of the properties that I bought, as a wholesale. Like I had it listed, I want to say like 110. And he was like, I'll buy it. I said, okay, now you should know this doesn't have an AC. And he's like, don't worry about it. And he double closed on it. And I saw that he sold it for 123. Okay. I had a hard time selling for 110,000 in the MLS. He sold it as a wholesale for 123,000. I said, okay, well, there's clearly something I'm missing. And so I took him out to lunch. We went to Claire McCoy. I still remember, and I grilled him. I'm like, teach me more about this world. And it's not like I wasn't familiar with the wholesale world. I knew about it.
Right.
But it's one thing to know about it. It's another one to have Jamil teach it to you. Right. And so I learned from Jamil, and as we started doing more deals, at that time I was happy to make 3,000, which God is atrocious today. But at that time I was happy with 3,000. And then I did a couple with Jamil where I was making 10,000 on an assignment. And after that, I was like, well, it looks like this wholesale thing is legit. That started in 2012, 2013.
Gosh, and it's funny. I had no idea how you guys all knew each other.
Yeah.
I kind of met all of you guys at once, and I had no idea that there's like this backstory to like how you guys met. I just assumed that you guys met the same way I met you, and it just was coincidence that you guys are all the same.
Yeah, I met Jamil as a Zillow lead. I met Brent Daniels 12 years ago when my client, the lady that said like, I can't wait to see who you are, when things turn around, she was my client. And we bought a property where Brent bought it at a trustee sale and wholesaled it to my client for a $40,000 difference. And I found out later like that was Brent and Mike, his guy today, Mike. Yeah. So they were partners back then. And so that deal where they made 40,000 was with that client. I actually took Brent to lunch. I was like, look, tell me what you did at the trustee sale. I don't understand what happened. I want to find out more about this. And he was cool. He was happy to help. And so I think one of the key things here is that, Brent's a big deal today and Jamil's a big deal today. But these guys have always been givers. So when I was reaching out to them, I was nobody. And that time they were successful, but they weren't as successful as they are today.
Yeah.
But they're successful today because they were givers back then. And I think that's what people need to remember. Like if you give, you have the heart of a servant.
Yeah.
You will find success.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I struggle with that because I always, I like just talking to people and having conversations, and like anybody, I mean, a year or 2 years ago, anybody could hit me up and I'd be like, yeah, let's jump on a call and chat, because I usually would get something out of someone else too. Like I learned from other people, even like, I just like two minds are better than one kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then you do get to a certain level when you're on a platform, like you have a successful podcast now that has tons of followers. So you are probably getting bombarded with, hey, Steve, I want to pick your brains, right?
Yeah.
And it's just literally like impossible now to be able to talk to everybody. And like that, I struggled with that, like having to be like, now I actually have to say no. Like I can't just like somebody, I can't go out to lunch because I don't even take lunch anymore.
Right. So I don't say no. So here's what I do, right? So you've never been licensed, right?
Oh, I'm licensed.
Oh, you're licensed. Okay. So I say, hey, Lauren, I want to go look at this rental property. I'm thinking about, I need not to buy. I want to lease this spot. Lauren, can you show me this property? What do you say?
I mean, I'm not really a realtor though. I'm licensed, but I'm not really a realtor.
But so I've never said no. Someone says I want to go look at this property. I've never said no. I would charge them what it would make sense for me to go. Right. Okay. So if they say I want to go, I want to rent this property, can you show it to me? I wouldn't say no. I was like, well, our fee is $500 just to go open a door.
Right.
So if you're okay paying $500, I will go open that door for you. And that has nothing to do with this lease. That's just to pay for my time. Right. And so it's the same thing here. If someone sends me a message on Instagram, I answer all questions. Like the problem is not whether I'll answer your question. The problem it might be like 3 or 4 days later.
Yeah.
Right. And so, if anyone wants to send me a DM, I even have my handle here. I will always get back to people. It just might be a while. Now, at the same time, if someone wants to pick my brain, they have that opportunity. There's a calendar link, but there's a cost.
Right.
And so that's the difference. I don't say no. It's just I have to prioritize. Right. That's how I handle it.
Tell me now, when you were starting all this and you started like hoteling and wholesaling, what, if you can remember, like put yourself back there at that time when you didn't have a ton of money behind you and you didn't have a lot of experience, what was your biggest fear?
My biggest fear was getting found out, getting caught. People finding out that I'm not really legit. That was my biggest fear, because I was doing deals, but as a realtor, man, this is just as bad in the wholesale world, but there are people that are doing deals, but are not profitable. And so that was me. I was doing deals. Like, I think the year before I got into coaching, I think my best year was 53 total transactions in a year. Okay. After coaching, I was consistently doing 100 transactions a year as a realtor. Right. But what happens is you're making that much money, it's usually due to marketing. And so, yes, you can make a lot of money. Your revenue can be very high and very lucrative, but no one really looks at the expenses. And so, I was making, a few $100,000 a year. I was taking home like 115, 120. And so for working 60 hours a week, that's awful. Right. And so that was, so when we say my biggest fear is being exposed. Like, they're going to find out I'm not as good as I look out there. Right. As people think, because you get the accolades, you get the awards for being a top producer and this and that, and so a lot of people chase, I call them like vanity. It's just like today, it's the followers, right? You want to get as many followers as possible. Right. You want to get this many likes and so on. And I'm not saying don't track it. Those are key metrics, but don't make that your identity. And that was what was happening. Was I had this identity where people were looking in or looking from the outside. It's like, this guy's successful. He's got he's doing this many transactions and this and that. But in reality, like, the bank account did not reflect that success. And that was my biggest fear before, everything turned around.
Yeah. The imposter syndrome, I guess you'd say.
Imposter syndrome. Yeah. It's a very real thing.
It is a very real thing. And I even think once you are doing well, you still have it.
Yeah.
Well, because you're like, there's nothing, what's so special about me? Like you don't feel, you still have that memory of who you were 10 years ago. I mean, I remember who I was. I haven't forgotten where I came from, you know?
Yeah. Well, I have friends that are super, super successful, like
Yeah.
clearing like $1 million a year, and they're waiting. Like they're not waiting. They're terrified they're gonna get found out. And that, like, I swear, it's like a conversation like once a quarter. Like, what the hell are you talking about? You're not gonna get exposed because you're the real deal. But they still carry that. You know, it's kind of like you said, right? Starting with nothing to getting to here, it's hard for your brain to comprehend. Like, no, you actually are here. But I think it's also healthy to have that, because if you're not, you might get comfortable, and you're definitely going to get past.
For sure.
Yeah.
So then when did Real Estate Disruptors start, like your podcast? What got you to get into that?
I started 2 years ago, so May of 2018. And so what prompted it was I went to this event by Dean Graziosi, and it's actually where I met Matt Larson as well. And Brandon Burchard comes up on stage, and he's got a product, which is, how to become an influencer, right? So he says, look, people want to find out your story. They want to know more about you. So you need to either write a book, start a blog, or start a podcast. And in my mind, it's like, I already wrote a book and that went nowhere. I started a blog, that sucks too. What the hell, let's give this podcasting a shot. And so in my mind, so like, I mentioned, I have multiple failures. There's lots of failures that we've dusted under the rug, okay? But the podcast, I went in there with the mindset, like, we're going to crush it. But even if we don't and we fail, nobody will know. And that's the mindset you have to have as an entrepreneur. I'm going to go for it. And if it fails, oh, well, at least I fired my shot.
Right.
Go down swinging. So I told myself, I'm going to start this podcast. And I'm in a very lucky spot because I'm in Phoenix, where, we're the guru capital of the world, the mecca of wholesaling. So I can start off, this is my vision. I can do a live show every Wednesday, every week for just Phoenix people until we have enough notoriety that people will fly in. And so as long as I have enough Phoenix people to build the momentum where people will fly in, I'll be okay. And so there was a little bit of nervousness attached to it. I was looking back, Rafael Vargas was my 8th guest. After that, a couple months after that, we had Max Maxwell come on the show. And after Max Maxwell came on the show, I was like, okay, that's a stamp of approval. We're legit. We're good. And now everyone, is asking to come onto the show.
Right.
And so, but that was the vision. And for me, I talk about creating 100 millionaires. That's something that's always been passion to me. In fact, when I opened the brokerage, I said I was going to create 18 millionaires within the brokerage. But when I said I got a national platform, let's create 100 millionaires. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to do it, because I've had luck, I've had success, and I wanted to, with all the money I spent on myself in personal development, like, how awesome would it be to share that information across the country for someone that doesn't have the money to invest in themselves today, can at least learn it faster so that they can eventually invest in themselves.
I love that. And I mean, I've got to say, it's funny how you started it and you're like, how would people really want to fly in, right? You probably thought that. Now it's like, there is something about the fact that you make people fly into it that has like this exclusivity sort of thing. Like, this is a big deal. And it kind of creates this buzz. So I know, like, when you told me, like, oh, but you have to fly in, I was like, ooh, like, that almost makes me feel important.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So, I mean, I flew in, I made the trip. I mean, it's fun. I have so many friends out there in Phoenix. So we just did a thing, but.
Well, the lucky thing is that we're in Phoenix, right? Like, I've talked to Don Costa about this. He's like, man, if he made people flew into Fresno, like, it wouldn't work. So thankfully, there's plenty of things to do in Phoenix, or Scottsdale at least. Yeah.
Right. Totally. Yeah. It's cool. And I mean, you definitely have a great, if you guys haven't heard his podcast, it's Real Estate Disruptors. Find it on Apple iTunes. Where can they find it? Apple iTunes?
Apple iTunes, Spotify, YouTube.
He streams it live.
Yeah, live on Facebook and live on YouTube.
Yeah, no, it's good. You've interviewed some pretty high level people. Me, myself, I'm just kidding.
For sure. You included.
Me included.
And what's interesting is there are a lot of guys out there that are big deals that we don't know about. And so I recently joined a mastermind, and I'm meeting these other people, like, holy crap. There are guys doing, like, not triple digits, multiple triple digits. Like, there are guys doing 300 plus deals in this country that you have no idea who they are. And so I can't wait to get them on the show. It's gonna be fun.
Seriously. No, there are definitely a lot of like high level people we don't even know about. Now, you talk a lot about personal development. I think that's something we definitely like bonded on, is like our
Absolutely.
obsession with personal development. What's your favorite book? Let's start with that.
Oh man, favorite book. I think recently, I really love The Road Less Stupid, but I would go back to the classic of Think and Grow Rich, which by the way is an incredibly difficult book to get through. I didn't know that.
It's dry.
I've had multiple people tell me that. But what's interesting? Like what do they say is the number one key to success in that book?
I don't even know, because I didn't get through it because it was so boring.
Persistence.
I didn't finish that book. I got it on Audible and I was like, I can't listen to this. This is so boring.
But I read that book when I first got into the business, and then along the way I've read over 100 books. I documented, like I have a spreadsheet of all the books I've read, reviewed, and so on. Not reviewed, but like I think are worthy. And then I went back and listened to Think and Grow Rich again, and I was like, man, if I just listened to Think and Grow Rich like 10 times, I would have saved myself from having to read all these other books, because a lot of the principles that we're learning that we think are great, these are books that come out in the last 10 years, they were already covered. They were discussed in Think and Grow Rich. So I would say that's still the number one book for me.
Okay. Maybe I need to like hunker down and watch.
If you get the Audible version, there's an Audible version of Think and Grow Rich that has Napoleon Hill's speeches in there too. So like it'll be like a couple of chapters and then a speech that was recorded of Napoleon Hill speaking. I really enjoyed that one a lot.
Okay. All right. Maybe I'll go revisit it. But I do love The Road Less Stupid.
Amazing book.
That is a good book.
Yeah. I think that's a book that anyone that's been in the business for a year needs to listen, because you're going to realize all the stupid stuff you've done.
I know. And just anybody in any business, not just like real estate. It's really a book for entrepreneurs.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Great book.
Yeah.
Now, what about, so you've done lots of coaching programs. What about you've gone to some seminars, and not so much real estate. Okay. Like what are because you've done a lot, you've done a lot of these, the personal development stuff. Like what is some of your favorite seminars you've been to?
The best bang for the buck today still is Insane Productivity by Darren Hardy. Best bang for the buck. I think it was like 2,000 to go 10. It was more expensive to fly there and pay for the hotel than it was actually for the event. I would say by far the best bang for the buck. And if you were to get it today, it's like a 12-week module. We covered that whole thing in one day. Like what he talks about on those 12 modules, that was a one-day thing from like 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m.
So it makes more sense to go and just knock it out in a day versus 12 modules.
I think the great thing for me, I love going to events because you're 100% present. Like there's a difference between watching it on video and being present, because if you're there are no distractions. And not only that, he'll tell you from stage, like put your phone away, put it on silent, turn it off if you can, but if you're watching a module, you're still getting distracted. You're going to have the got-a-minute questions, right? Like those questions never go away. You're going to have fires, but if you go to an event and you're properly staffed, your staff will take care of stuff so that it doesn't have to get to you, right? So I think that's the big thing about going to the event. And then, so I like that one. I really enjoyed his high performance forum. That was a 2.5-day event. I think that was incredible. Strategic Coach has been monumental. One of the exercises they work on is actually to help deal with the imposter syndrome. And so I think that was a coaching program. There were 4 one-day events sprinkled throughout the year. So if you started in May, then it'd be 3 months, 3 months, 3 months, and that was it. And you pay for the year. So that was really cool too.
Okay, so obviously there's a trend that you love Darren Hardy.
Yeah.
And so do I, as you know. My favorite book is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Yeah. Big Darren Hardy fan. So but I haven't done any of the seminars, so I want to maybe look into those.
You absolutely have to. You have to go to his things in person. And what's really interesting is, he seems like a really nice guy.
Yeah.
And, he's got a smile on his Darren dailies and whatever. But man, he's an intense person in person.
Is he? Okay.
You talk about if someone's like a 99D on the disc profile, you can just feel when they're in the room. You know what I'm talking about? Like when this person's in the room, like the energy of the room just changes. And that's him. And he's intense all the time. Like he can't even sit down and have like a nice lunch. Like he's just intense. Great guy, obviously, but Not someone that you're like, hey, you want to go hang out? That's just not going to happen with that guy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm very intrigued.
Yeah, I'm not even sure he knows how to have fun.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That is, they always say like when you like sometimes the worst thing is like meeting your hero. And he is like my hero, like Darren Hardy. And there's no relation, by the way,
Yeah.
but like Darren Hardy is like, I don't know, ever since I read The Compound Effect, I mean, it really like that book really changed my life. And I read Entrepreneur Roller Coaster after that. Life-changing books. And I've always wondered, like, would he be the same in person? Like, is this person I built him up to be? And yeah, I haven't built
still my hero.
He's
still my hero. But his position on family is you shouldn't have kids because it will limit what you can do.
Ah, okay.
Right. I mean, he's all about business.
Right. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, and we're more about balance, I think.
Exactly.
Let's talk about balance. What is your why? Like, why are you really doing this? Why do you do all this?
So I think that there's a couple of things. I think I'm screwed up, right? I think that's just the cocktail of coming here as an immigrant, of having your parents in an Asian culture. I think like we came here to chase the American dream. So it'd be an absolute disappointment if we didn't pursue the American dream, right? Like take every opportunity that you can have, right, in this country. So I am. There's no hard ceiling on what you can achieve. And so I'm going to go as far as I can go. The second thing is, growing up in a Chinese family and the oldest son, my parents always said, if anything happens to us, when we retire, when we get old, you are responsible for taking care of us. It's not like, put us in a home or this and that. It's like, we're probably going to live with you. Like, this is what's going to happen, right? And then it was also, if anything happens to us, you are responsible to take care of your 5 younger brothers. You need to sacrifice yourself to make sure that they're successful. So this is what I grew up with, okay? Right. And then there's also, you talk about the tiger mom. No matter what you do, it's not good enough.
Yeah.
And so that creates a competitive drive, right? You're after every exam, you're looking over the kids, like what they get in their test.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's that, again, I guess a really big thing is just being super, super competitive. And knowing that no matter what you did was never good enough for mom and dad, I think that kind of screws you up in the head so that it makes you want to pursue and achieve everything. And again, going back to what we said to Darren, right? It's an achievement addiction. If the only way to get mom and dad's attention was to do well, then you're programmed to always try to do well.
That is very true. And I've put a lot of thought, like what motivates everybody, because now I'm a coach, I've got students, and I've got to figure out like what every individual student, like how can I push them to succeed? And I've figured out that it's more emotional in nature than it is. Like I can give you steps A, B, C, right? That's in my course. I can give that to you. But a lot of students will get stuck on something. Like they get stuck in an area of the business. And usually there's this emotional component that has something that's like, it's like they're struggling with motivation because there's something in their head and I'm not motivating them enough somehow. And so I've always been I've been paying a lot of attention lately to what is motivating everybody. And I really figured out, it's funny. I really feel like it's three things. It's either there's competitive people like you. So it's either people are motivated by competition, revenge, or fear.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes a combo of two. So like for me, it's revenge and fear. Like all day long. I was saying it this morning. I was literally just having this conversation this morning. I was like, somebody was like, you're not competitive other than in business. And I was like, actually, I'm not really a competitive person at all. Like not even in business. I am really motivated by revenge and fear. I one time had a really crappy boss. I had a boss that was so bad and such a jerk that was like this revenge. Like, I'll show you, I will never work for someone like you again. Mm-hmm. I'll show you. Like, that was my revenge. Like, I'll get myself out of this situation. And like one day, like I will get to see you and I will not be working for you anymore. And I'll be so happy. And so that's what got me to be an entrepreneur. I
think that's great. Because I actually have, there are a couple of things where that's happened, where I've faced rejection and it just fuels me.
Yeah.
Like, watch me. I'm going to succeed despite you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then fear is more of like back against the wall. Mm-hmm. And I've heard that like the human body apparently performs better under stress
Oh, yeah.
Like our performance is better under stress. And I think that, yeah, like I perform much better under stress. When my back is against the wall and I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of like, oh no, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills, or like something happened personally. So then I'm like, oh, I better make money so I can pay my way out of this.
Yeah.
Sounds like I'm like I have to pay my bail or something. No, I mean, but like just like, oh man, this is, I need to throw money at this problem. So,
But I think it's great that you figured that out, because
Yeah.
that's one of the hardest things, how to figure out how to motivate people, because I can't stand motivating people. I love that you've taken the time to figure that out, because
Right.
if you can motivate someone, you can get a lot out of them.
Yeah, you really can. Like I had a student and he was like younger guy, and I could kind of tell, I was like, I bet fear motivates him. And he's like this younger guy, and I was like, what's worse? Like making some offers, like, lowballing sellers, or moving back in with your parents in your 20s? Like, and he's like, moving back in with my parents, definitely.
Yeah.
Make those offers then.
Exactly.
Okay, we got to wrap it up. Well, Steve, it's been a pleasure. So what are you working on right now that's big to you? I know you have the Real Estate Disruptors podcast where people can find you there, and they should absolutely subscribe. Is there anything else you want to share?
Yeah, so we also do sales training, which I think is one of the most important things that we need today, given the prevalence of information and knowledge out there. Like we're all pulling the same list, cold calling the same guy, texting the same guy. You need to be different. And so for me, I'm really passionate about running lean. So how can you make more money without spending more money? And the best way to make more money without spending more money is to convert better. So convert more calls to appointments, convert more appointments to sales, and buy them cheaper than you're buying before. And the key to that is to be better on the phone and better in person. So it's through sales. So I don't have the link right now, so I'll send it to you.
Okay. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
This is going to go live on the Wholesaling Inc podcast. So you guys, I know you're probably live right now watching us, but this will also be on Wholesaling Inc. I'll put it in the show notes. Steve, thank you so much. Is there anything
This was a lot of fun.
to say, or find Steve? Last thoughts.
Yeah, last thoughts I would say is, you guys may have heard this before, but why not you? We live in the best country on the planet. You and I we're examples of what can happen if you really go all in. So why not you? Why not now? Let's go for it. Get everything that you deserve.
Awesome. All right, Steve, thank you so much. We appreciate
Thank you.
you.
All right. Take care. Bye.